We have some time for questions and answers or comments. So please, if you want to ask a question or raise a comment, raise your hand. And there are some mics available. Do I see anybody? Yes, in the back over there.
I'm Stefan Keukelerer from the University of Leuven and College of Europe. You indicated that the Asian countries still take United Kingdom, Germany and France serious, but you also see a decline in the perception about these countries, or is it remaining on the same level?
I think, you know, first of all, Britain and France play a particular role in the UN, which many Asians may think is unjustified, but is recognized, and it's also recognized that Britain and France are contributors of ideas in the Security Council, and that they have also contributed to rescuing the UN when it's in trouble, as has done the wider European Union through Operation Artemis and a few years later the intervention in Kivu. They were band-aid short-term solutions, but they were important and valuable. So I think those countries are on the map because of their permanent seats and because they also, knowing that they are declining relative to other world powers, try to contribute and make an argument for themselves by contributing. And France really is doing a lot of that in Africa at the moment with, as I say, insufficient European company in my view. And I wish my own country, Canada, would do more to keep France company in Africa. Now, coming to Germany, it's recognized as a major economic actor. It's taken very seriously by China, by Japan, by everybody in Asia as a very serious economic actor, and in fact, it's seen as the European leader. Britain and France are not seen as the European leader. Germany is. And its quiet approach is all the more effective, in a way, in it being seen as a leader. But the rest is pretty well out of focus, except for niche markets. Europe is considered a very high-tech part of the world. It's considered a great purveyor of luxury products in Asia. And Asians love luxury products when they can afford them. It's a great place to have holidays, but frankly, beyond that, it's a bit vague what Europe is. I was talking actually about India. I didn't want to suggest that I know what the Chinese think about Europe. I really don't know that. Occasionally I hear the Chinese in a worldview. I can speak with some confidence on India only because I researched it.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Yes, you were talking about...
Can you please introduce yourself?
Jean-Christophe Defreigne. I'm a professor at the Institute for European Studies of University Saint-Louis in Brussels. I was a bit wondering because you seem to find the French role in Africa quite positive, but on the other hand, you have expressed some regrets, or I would say some limitations about the intervention in Libya, which was, the mandate was not seen as being particularly respected by Russia and China. If we look at the French policy in Africa, it has used much more hard power very recently, sending military troops not only in Libya and Mali, but also in Ivory Coast, for example. It is involved in Central Africa. In the case of Libya, if you look at the Chinese reaction, China had to repatriate 32,000 Chinese workers. The Chinese Foreign Ministry talked about a loss of $19 billion due to the French, UK and NATO intervention in Libya, which has created a lot of nationalist reaction in China against the French and British intervention in Libya. Now, there are also Chinese officials who are wondering whether the hosting of Laurent Gbagbo in Ivory Coast and his support by the French army to Ouattara, was not also because Gbagbo was offering a lot of economic contract tied with economic aid programs from China. So in that sense, is the role of France in Africa not creating, I would say, nationalist reactions from China or fear from China that the EU is backing some hard power in Africa?
In brief, no.
Okay, thank you. In the front here, and then over there.
I'm going to switch the subject a little bit. Hi, I'm Deepa Acharya, and I'm a researcher at the Institute for European Studies here in Brussels.
Lucky you.
Lucky me. I'm American, so I think your prices things are spot on, what your comments are. But I work on India, and actually, contrary to what you were saying, you've just done research on India. I in fact think you were one of the people who can really speak with authority on this issue, considering your book and your previous experience in India. It was refreshing to hear your opinions about kind of the way, and I think this was a really astute observation about the way that there's this kind of multiple participation of different member states, and it confuses the Indian government about what the role is. I was curious though, you said EU is a puzzle to the Indians. I'm curious that considering what happened on Friday with the elections and kind of the new government in place that's kind of repositioned India's goals in context of foreign policy, what your opinions would be in terms of, with this new kind of government in place, how would the EU even go about putting together a foreign policy towards India, and what kind of issues should be covered?
Great. Well, thank you for your comments. The first thing to be said about the new government is we just don't know. For India, there are three relationships that matter critically: China, the United States, and Pakistan. And that's perfectly normal. The European Union shouldn't be upset that it's not one of those key relationships. And I won't go into why, but I think you can all guess why those three relationships are important to India. Now, the EU and India have been trying to negotiate a free trade agreement. Goes back so far, I can't even remember when it started. It's gotten absolutely nowhere. Probably the Indian negotiators were more at fault than the European ones, because their negotiating style is, by and large, not to agree, because in India you're never blamed for stalling, but you are blamed for selling out to foreigners very easily. So the incentives of Indian negotiators to be hyper-prudent, not to say inert, is very strong. Modi may change that, because his program revolves around economic growth. And to achieve economic growth, India needs more outside investment. It needs to become more of an international trader, and we all know it can. So which instruments Modi and his team choose to try to implement this overriding goal of reintroducing high growth to India, we don't yet know. We don't yet know who his key team will be, although we know some of the members of his new team, but we don't know what the actual policies are going to be. If the trade negotiators change, I'll know that there's something serious happening on the trade negotiations with the European Union, Canada, many others, and they've all been stalled for a very long time. The main achievement has been a very partial free trade agreement with ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nation Countries. But I think the new government of India provides an opportunity for a new beginning. I think the relations of India can be more positive with each of China, the US, and Pakistan. And a strong government is always more likely to produce significant and positive change than very weak governments. And unfortunately, in the last 5 years in India, we had a government which, for a variety of reasons, was, as you know, quite weak.
Thank you very much. We can take one more question, lady over there.
Yeah, thank you. Christina Eckes from the Amsterdam Center for European Law and Governance at the University of Amsterdam. And my research focus is not specifically in Asia, so please forgive me if my question is more an interested observer. You spoke a lot about trade and economic relations. I was wondering, where does energy come in? I mean, with the increasing demand of Asian countries in energy, it seems maybe that Russia and the, let's say, European countries you named should not be lumped together in that sense, but that this relationship might actually be fundamentally changing.
Well, you raise a very interesting question, because I'm participating on the margins of a project about the bilateral relationship between India and Japan. And energy is a huge subject for that project, because both countries have a huge need of energy resources. So where are these going to come from? India has done very poorly on assuring supply of energy, and because the country's air is already very polluted, is unlikely to be able to fully exploit its domestic coal resources. The same is true for China, with unbearable pollution in many of China's areas. So it's a very big issue. At the same time, we're constantly surprised in the energy field. We tend to project into the future on the basis of the present. But actually, shale gas took us all by surprise. The fact that the US should be, again, a major producer and likely exporter is hot news in Canada, which imagined it was going to be exporting mainly to the United States over the next 50 years. Change of plan, and we need a new policy in Canada. So things change quite fast on the environmental, on the energy front, and that is related, as I say, in Asian minds, increasingly to past policies that have been environmentally unsustainable, as air quality deteriorates sharply, not just in China. The air quality in India, in some urban centers like Delhi, is even worse on recent statistics. So these governments really need to think hard. I'm sure Russia will be a supplier for countries like Japan, continue to be a supplier for China and others, but likely new sources of energy will take us all by surprise in years to come. There's a huge amount of research going into unconventional sources of energy, and we're bound to be surprised by the outcomes of some of this. So you're right to identify it as a huge issue. You're right to identify Russia as a major actor, but Canada thought of itself as a major actor and now finds itself as a major actor somewhat in need of clients.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Unfortunately, the time is moving on, so we have to end this session. Not again without thanking David for being with us and for sharing with us his quite stimulating ideas, and I'm sure they will influence the rest of the debates in the coming days here. I understand that you will join us for lunch now, so if you have any other comments or pressing questions, I'm sure you can address them over lunch to David. We will resume at 2 o'clock sharp for the next round of parallel sessions. The lunch will be served upstairs, so that is about all I say. So once again, thank you very much, David. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.